Hello, self-starters, problem solvers, creative outside-the-box thinkers, and community builders. We need this like water. We need to gush, flow over dips and dives and thrive. We need patience, unconditional love, that authentic when you're down, we're still around type vibes. And you know that self-love should gush and flow over dips and dives. Thank you, young birds. I apologize. The older bird is here to help you realize your time to blossom, rise, revise, and then climb as high as the sky. Don't be shy. No time to compromise. Your anxious thoughts are just lies. With that poem, I'd like to introduce you to this podcast, specially made for positive impact ventures, helping you find your way through the external funding journey as a new entrepreneur or new nonprofit board member. Bird's Eye Impact, where positive ideas take flight. I am Dr. Latoya Hinton. I'm proudly neurodivergent and happy to spread positivity, optimism, and nourishment to advocates for positive change. I want to bring hope and encouragement to folks who are just starting out with their own business or just starting their journey in nonprofit management. I'm a grant writer, researcher, instructional designer, and data analyst. I'm the perfect matchmaker for strategic partnerships that sustain growth and resilience in trying times. Katie Leefe for more neuro affirming financial planning in our part 2 episode.
Say that this is a topic that is resonating with them, and especially the late diagnosed folks in the ADHD community, in ADHD, in the autistic community, because there's a lot that we share in common in terms of managing executive dysfunction and finding tools that will support our unique brains. And so I think that that's kind of where we originally kind of started talking about this conversation. We had a little bit of talk last time about this new technology tool called Pistachio Pay that is made for neurodivergent people by neurodivergent people. And we got really excited about the possibility of having some supportive tools that can help us, help us plan for the future, whether that is, buying a car or a house, or, some people even save a certain amount of money if they're thinking about launching a new venture. And so I think that a lot of us can relate on many levels to financial planning with a very unique brain that needs supports and resources to be at its best. And so I think that's one of the ways that we want to kind of frame this conversation as well. If you are kind of coming into this podcast episode and you're like, I am dealing with a lot of shame, or I'm dealing with a lot of guilt around the fact that I haven't managed my finances in a way that is expected of me by, other people, whether it's family members, whether it is colleagues that you're working with, or whether it's even, it could be like your children, or you're feeling like, this is really hard for me to set a good example for the next generation, because I, haven't really faced the tension around personal finances. So I think being able to get to the bottom of some of the challenges that we have, but then also leaning into solutions, is why we decided to continue to talk about this topic in the first place. So Katie, you had mentioned before that you work with a lot of neurodivergent small business owners. in your coaching practice.
Yeah.
So how, in your view, can neurodivergent small business owners successfully heal from financial trauma?
Mhm. So that's a very kind of complicated, multi-level question, which I love because it's nice and juicy. So I think one of the first things that I would say is that bringing up that feeling of shame that you just touched on, and that is central to so many of the issues that particularly neurodivergent founders or anyone who's had like a financial pivot in the way they're getting their money, or has made a mistake in the past regarding their finances and paid a price for it, whether that is emotional or financial or various. Actually, I'm going to start the question again. Okay, so one of the things I really wanted to pick up on with what you said there was that sense of shame, because it's so central to everything that we do in terms of my work with entrepreneurial founders who are neurodivergent. And it's also something that is both the biggest warning sign that something needs to change and be done differently, and also one of the biggest things that holds us back from making those positive changes. So I wanted to address that one first before I went on to sort of specific steps. So what I say to everybody is that there is nothing wrong with you. You are human, and if you've made errors, the chances are it's due to the systems and the tools that were available to you not serving you in the way that they should. And the other thing is, I know enough neurotypical people who very much struggle with this. So it's already a fairly high bar of staying on top of your finances, staying in control of your finances, feeling confident about your finances. But the other things that are uniquely difficult for a lot of neurodivergent brains is that it can require very highly detailed paperwork. We're not very good at going through some very, very detailed things. Either it'll send us down a rabbit hole of over concentration, or we'll just blank it and go, I can't process any of that, I'll read it later. And then 5 years later, we haven't actually read the paperwork and we've ended up paying for something. The second thing is that it relies on consistency and routine. And again, a lot of our brains are wired towards novelty, change, like inconsistent levels of energy, and that's not set up very well for our brains. And then also a lot of this is digital. Like you don't physically have a pile of money in front of you that you watch go up and down. And a lot of the ways in which it's presented to us is not very good for going up and down to see the impact of things. And then I think, was it you, Latoya, who mentioned the dyscalculia element of understanding numbers in a very real way? How does that show up for you?
Definitely. So, and I'll just put myself out there. Healing from math trauma as a person with dyscalculia has been directly connected to my healing from financial trauma. And I think one of the things that I've found is that anytime I have access to visuals, and I'm talking about charts and graphs and anything that will sort of visualize my finances, really helps me to like sort of grasp what it is that I'm looking at in the short term and the long term. And I feel like once I have that visual, I can then logically strategize and kind of work through what a plan might be for me. And so I'm really looking forward to financial planning tools that have that in mind, that have that mode of communication in mind, because my brain just does not work with memorizing numbers very well. And so I think it's a combination of just kind of having issues with working memory in general, kind of stemming from ADHD. Sometimes I struggle with remembering people's names. I remember when I was working on my dissertation, it was a really, really big deal because I was defending my dissertation and I needed to know like a whole bunch of authors' names and the year that they published, you know, articles and books. And I just couldn't keep those numbers in my head. And so I just requested that I had a guide there. So I would just have an outline with me and I'd have all the important facts listed. At one point I did a data analytics boot camp and they had us, coding in Python, and I would actually just pull up a guide with all of my codes and I would just use it as a reference point. And I was like really great at problem solving, but I just needed that guide there with me. So any kind of tool that lets me remember several, transactions with a guide is something that's helpful for me. I always, in banking apps, I always pull up the long list of transactions, but I can't memorize. Like, I wouldn't be able to memorize my balance, for instance, in my head. If you were to ask me right now, what is it? I would give you an approximation of what it is, right? In both my checking and my savings. So I think, like, for me, it's like visualize those numbers, right? Something that does that allows my brain to make sense of what's going on, and less requirements for memorizing things are really, really great for me. And I know that I can't speak for everybody who has dyscalculia, but that has been my experience since childhood. I just have never really been able to memorize even like the shortest of arithmetic problems. I just can't memorize them. It doesn't mean that I can't calculate. And I think that that's the difference, right? It doesn't mean that I'm not a creative problem solver. It doesn't mean that I don't know what goes into a formula and understand like all of the different elements and the order that they're supposed to go in. I know all of those things because I've been doing math for years. I'm 38, and probably the first time I was exposed to any sort of mathematics at all was like maybe age 4 or 5, right? So it's been a ton of years, but it's just one of those things where shortly after doing it, it falls out of my brain. Or, in order to remember what I had done in the past, I have to have a guide, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we've got the whole, going back to that subject of the whole system being set up in a way that is not neuro-inclusive. It's relying on routine and similar and the same thing over and over again. It's relying on being able to process dense material. It's relying on lack of visuals, as you're saying. And it's also relying on you being able to have a high level of working memory when you are dealing with these things. So I forgot, for example, that I had a whole pension pot sitting somewhere. I just completely forgot for years. And then I only found it because I was clearing out my old emails and an old email address. And that's the only reason why I found that money. Not a huge amount, but like enough to have made a difference. So now I've combined my pension pots and put it all in one place. And now I use a lot of app-based financial tools to help me with that visual element. But so basically, point one is that the system that we currently have or have had up until this point, we're getting more interesting about with the solutions now, but chances are if you're sitting here and you're listening to us at approximately the same age, then most of your financial history has been without those tools or without those adaptations and without any acknowledgement that that might be harder for you. The second thing is, when we're going back to that question of trauma, is the negative practices that you may have developed or been pushed towards. So we've talked about the positives, what they expect you to do in order to be financially responsible and successful, blah, blah, blah. But also the things that draw a lot of neurodivergent brains in would be things like gamification. So what's helpful, what's like giving you all that juicy dopamine? It could be auction sites. Things like eBay and Vinted and Depop and all those sorts of things. It could be betting and racing, those sorts of, like sports. It could be impulse purchases for a hyperfixation. And if you have that lack of, if understanding the value of buying something that's say £500, like, I don't know, a beautiful keyboard that's £500 because you're so determined that you're going to become a new musician, that £500 is just like, it's just something you have to bat aside in order to get the keyboard because you're feeding on that dopamine. And if you can't visualize what that 500 number is going to do to what's in your bank account very clearly, you are much more likely to not be able to save, to make decisions that don't go very well with your brain and your bottom line. So there's all of those contributes to a sense of